Okay, I think I'll get started because otherwise it's going to impinge upon the other subject. Well, welcome. I'm Kevin Morgan. I'm a teacher of history and government and politics at Cardiff Sixth Form College. Appreciate I haven't got a lot of time really to talk to you about these two subjects, so I'm going to get started if you don't mind, and any other parents can sort of join in then as they're admitted to the meeting. For some reason. Okay, the first question that I wanted to start with is, why study A-level history? Well, the US industrialist Henry Ford once wrote in 1916 that history is more or less bunk, which is nonsense. Well, he might have been a pioneer in terms of the car industry and in terms of industrial techniques like mass production, but I think he was talking absolute rubbish there, because history is a subject which develops a wide variety of skills. I mean, in particular, AS and A-level history encourages learners to acquire an understanding of different identities within society and an appreciation of aspects such as social, cultural, religious and ethnic diversity. And I think within the modern world, history could possibly teach us quite a lot in that sense. It allows learners to develop as critical and reflective thinkers with curious and inquiring minds, acquire an understanding of the nature of historical study. For example, that history is concerned with judgments based on available evidence, and as a result of that, historical interpretations are provisional and they can change over time according to the evidence that is presented. It allows learners as well to make links and comparisons within and across different periods and aspects of the past, and I think that's very important, because certainly the A-level history course develops a holistic understanding of the topics that we do, rather than sort of breaking them down into distinctive topic areas. And of course, the A-level course encourages learners to use their historical knowledge to construct a case and reach substantiated judgments about actually quite complex issues. In terms of government and politics, well, again, government and politics is a subject which develops so many intellectual traits within our students, not just knowledge and understanding of contemporary political structures within Wales and the United Kingdom, but also broader global political structures as well. So, for instance, America. And I think the course in particular really does develop within our students knowledge and understanding of the rights and responsibilities of individual groups. And again, not just within the context of Britain, but within the wider world as well. It also develops an understanding of key political ideas and how these political ideas have impacted upon governments, both in an economic and a social sense. So, for instance, liberalism, conservatism. And of course, consistent with history as well, government and politics allow students to critically analyse, interpret, evaluate political information in order to form those independent arguments and those independent judgments. And I'd say that's where the overlap is between government and politics and history, and that's why so many students study both subjects in that sense. And of course, you can't study government and politics without having an engagement with contemporary political affairs. I'm sure most of us watched the presidential debate this week and were quite shocked by what we saw. And I think that's the difference between history and government and politics in that sense. Politics is an organic subject which is constantly evolving, and that's one thing that students would need to be aware of, those contemporary issues. What will learners study for both subjects in Cardiff Sixth Form College? Well, I'm going to focus on history first, and the history course is divided into 5 units, 2 that they study at AS and 3 at A2 level. You can see period 1 there, unit 1. The period study is something that we study in September, and it takes us up to about the January of AS level. It's a written examination of 1 hour and 30 minutes, and in terms of assessment structure, they're open-ended questions. Essentially, students have 4 essay questions and they have to answer 2 of those. And the issues, and I've highlighted them here, the topics that they study, relate to this topic area here of politics, protest and reform in Wales and England, 1780 to 1880. The period was quite a tumultuous one, really, in terms of not just political reform through the Great Reform Act of 1832, but also as well numerous other reforms, which were ultimately stimulated by the level of rural and urban protests that occurred in Wales and England at that time. So it's a very interesting topic. We see a lot of change within Wales and the UK as a whole. And yeah, it's a subject which, especially with international students, really gives them a dimension in terms of British history. For Unit 2 is the depth study, and you notice it's Part 1 because Part 2 then is done in Year 13. That's a written examination of 1 hour and 45 minutes long. And there's a different focus for this question. This question is very much based on students' ability to analyse and evaluate the value of primary evidence within its historical context, but also analyse and evaluate different historical interpretations relating to one of the key issues for the topic area. And you can see that students will be studying the Weimar Republic and its challenges 1918 to 1933, essentially how Germany recovered from the First World War. But then, of course, we have that catastrophic economic event in the 1930s, which is the Great Depression, stimulated by the Wall Street crash. And then we see the fortunes of the Nazi Party changing quite markedly in that sense. Okay, so that's much more of an international focus compared to Unit 1. And very successful department at AS level, as you can see there from our results in 2020, 70% of students got an A grade, 88% A to B, 100% A to C, and that's consistent with the year before as well, where we achieved those strong outcomes. In terms of A2 level, as I mentioned earlier, students will study then 3 units. Unit 3 is the breadth study, the American century, 1890 to 1990. So you can see there the parallels with Unit 1. It's a very sort of broad study of American history. Linked to 2 topic areas. So we'll have a look at the struggle for civil rights in America during the period 1890 to 1990. But then the wonderfully entitled Making of a Superpower is something that we'll have a look at as well. Essentially having a look at how America evolves from isolationism to sort of being quite actively involved in global politics in that sense. And for this particular paper, again, it's assessed through essays. So students will have a choice of essays that they can answer. Section A will be small in terms of the time period, Section B much larger in that sense. And then Unit 4 is Nazi Germany, and you can see from that evidence-based question with 1 essay question then in Section B, 1 question out of 2 essentially that they answer in Section B. And both examinations of 1 hour and 45 minutes long. And Unit 4 very much builds upon Unit 2 at AS level. And then Unit 5 is historical interpretation, so that's coursework, 3,000 to 4,000 words, and it's linked to a specific historical problem or issue that has engaged historians. Students currently have a choice of 3 questions, and they obviously only have to do 1. Okay, and again, outstanding outcomes achieved by that lovely A2 cohort that I had last year, 100% A*, which was testament really to the strong results that they achieved at AS level, and 4 of those students being accepted into Oxbridge, 3 of them to study humanities-based subjects, which is a source of pride for the humanities department really, and you know, is testament to the amount of students now that we're seeing within our subject areas. And then quickly onto government and politics, and you can see that the AS course for government and politics is very much focused on British politics. So Unit 1 is introducing students to key themes within Wales and the UK, such as the National Assembly, Westminster Government, the Supreme Court, which is a fairly new phenomenon within Britain. And then Unit 2 is introducing students to the principle of active citizenship and the rights and responsibilities that citizens have within the United Kingdom. Both examinations 1 hour and 30 minutes long. And you can quickly there see in terms of the assessment structure, Section A starts off with 2 very small 6-mark questions, but by the time they get into Section C, it's more sort of discursive, and they have to answer 2 essay questions out of a choice of 3. Okay, again, very successful department at AS level in terms of our results last year, 100% A to B, and well over half of students getting an A grade in the subjects as well. And certainly when you compare us to the national comparator, you know, we are well in excess of the national comparator. On to A2 level then, students study a further 2 units at A2 level. So there is a difference between government and politics and history. History is 5 units, government and politics is 4. For unit 3, students will study political concepts and theories, and you can see there on the bottom, mainly focused on 4 ideological traditions. So liberalism, conservatism, socialism, communism, and nationalism. And there you can see in terms of the assessment structure, section A, 2 compulsory questions, 60 marks on offer for each question. Quite small scale questions. I mean, you look at the command words, it's sort of more explain, explore. But then section B, they have the essay question where they have to answer 2 essay questions from a choice of 3. And then by the time we get to section C, it becomes a bit more of a synoptic question, which focuses on the specification as a whole, as opposed to section B, where they focus on specific areas on the specification. And because section C is more holistic in that sense, you can see it's worth more marks, so 40 marks in total. And then the last unit then that they will study for government and politics will be the government and politics of the United States of America. And that's taught through 3 related themes, essentially: democracy in America, governance, and participation. And obviously, like I mentioned earlier, with all of the stuff that's going on in America at the moment, it's a very interesting topic, this one, for students to study. Both examinations at A2 level in government and politics are 2.5 hours long, and they carry 120 marks. And then finally, the outcomes again obtained by our A2 cohort in 2020 were outstanding. You know, no student achieved less than a B, and A*A, 88%. There were actually 9 students in the class, and 8 of them achieved either an A* or an A. Only 1 student achieved a B, which, you know, as a college, we were very, very pleased with. Okay, so obviously that's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour in terms of history and government and politics. Hopefully there'll be an opportunity, time permitting, after Mr. Davis's presentation to ask any questions. If not, and you have to go to the next presentation, then my email address is provided there. Please make a note of it, and if you do have any questions, feel free to drop me a line and I'll get back to you next week. Okay.